Welcome back to the i.e.427 garage, everybody. Today we are going to install our i.e.427 turn signal switch on the Mark IV here. These are the things that you're going to need before you install your turn signal switch. First, you're going to need the turn signal switch itself, which comes pre-assembled. You're going to need the hub with the pre-assembled hardware. You're going to need a drill. You're going to need an 1/8 inch long drill bit or an 1/8 inch standard length drill bit. I like to use a step drill to make the holes larger to a 1/4 inch size, but you can also use a 1/4 inch drill bit. You're going to need a 3/8 combination or open-end wrench. For your Allen keys, you're going to need an 1/8 inch Allen key, a 5/32 Allen key in either a standard or the T-handle type, and then you are going to need a 5/16 Allen key to eventually tighten the center bolt for the steering hub. Let me show you the parts as you're going to receive them when we ship them back to you. So you're going to have your modified hub right here, and we provide new hardware with the hub so that it has enough engagement into the hub so it's going to hold the steering wheel on nice and secure. We suggest that as you run these in for the final time that you add a little bit of anti-seize or some blue thread locker, medium strength thread locker, just so that the stainless steel hardware does not gall in the aluminum hub. You can see on this one, it's marked with a 4. That just designates to us during the machine process that that is a Mark IV hub. The Mark IV hub is used for both the Mark IVs and the Gen 3 coupes. So if you have a Gen 3 coupe and you see a 4 stamped in it, just know that those hubs are universal between the coupe and the Mark IV. If it's a Mark III, we'll stamp a Mark III in that, and that basically means that anything from a Mark III and before essentially has the same hub. Now, they changed the manufacturing process of the hubs, but they're virtually identical. Anything from a Mark I all the way through a Mark III. Where the change came is in the early Mark IVs, they switched the orientation of the steering shaft. So it went from a horizontal to a vertical on the flats for the hub. And so we need to make sure when you send us your hub that it's actually from a Mark IV or from a Mark III, because it changes where we put the canceling pins that are on the back of the hub so that it cancels in the proper orientation when it's installed in the car. So the other part that you're going to receive is the actual turn signal. That's right here. It's going to come with all of the hardware, the backing plate, and the angled spacer attached to it. This is so that you know exactly how this all goes together. We've made the backing plate, which is right here, universal so that this can be used on a new build or it can be retrofit into an older car. That's why it has this U-shaped to it. So this will slide on from the back and enable you to do this as a retrofit in an older car, a car that's been on the road already, or a new car that you just simply have waited to install a turn signal switch in. And then, of course, we leave the wire harness here plenty long so that depending on where you're going to tie it into your chassis harness, you've got plenty of wire to attach all that stuff to. The switch, as I pointed out in an earlier video, has a provision for the horn so that if you gently pull on this handle, it will activate the horn. There's a secondary switch over on the right-hand side of the actual turn signal assembly. That switch can be used either for your hazard lights, your emergency flashers, or it can be used to activate your high and low beams in the car. And we provide complete wiring instructions for the turn signal, and you have to choose one or the other, or not to use it at all. But it will not do both, meaning it will not do hazard lights and your high and low beams on your headlights. It doesn't have that ability. It's one or the other, and you have to pick which one you want to use. Generally, we wire it for the high beam, low beams on the car because one, it requires just a single pole relay, and two, it kind of puts all of the stuff that you're going to use most frequently in a position where it's easily accessible. So you're not going to use your emergency flashers, each time you drive the car, or hopefully you're not. But, if you're driving the car at night, the high and low beam switch is going to be right there on the column, and you'll be able to activate that and then turn off the high beams whenever you need to. All right, I want to address the wiring because I've gotten a couple of emails in the past few months questioning the wiring that we provide with the kit. The wiring diagrams and instructions that we provide with the turn signal are going to work for 99% of the guys out there. That 1% are going to be the ones that are going to use a custom wire harness or something that's not common in these cars. If you have something like that, go ahead, send me an email. I'll answer whatever questions you may have. However, the wiring diagram is laid out color for color, terminal for terminal. So in the wiring instructions, I will tell you the yellow wire goes to this terminal on a relay, etc. If you follow those instructions, it's going to work. Most of the problems with wiring that we've found, especially with the turn signals themselves, are when customers are using the single taillights on a Mark IV and they have not installed some type of trailer light converter or two-pole relay in order to activate the turn signal and isolate it from the brake light circuit. So if you use the trailer light converter, it does all that automatically. So you want to make sure that if you're doing a Mark IV and you haven't yet installed your trailer light converter, make sure that's installed. Because if you combine the turn signal and the brake light wires at the back of the car, what's going to happen is you're going to turn the turn signal on or activate the turn signal, and it's going to flash all four lights, regardless of which side you activate, whether it's right or left. Then you're also going to find when you push on the brake pedal, it turns all four lights on, as if you have brake lights on all four corners. So you really want to make sure that one, you follow our wiring diagram, and two, that you install your trailer light converter if you are running the single taillights on each side at the back of the car. Next, you're going to want to unpack your turn signal switch, pull the hardware out of the turn signal switch, the backing plate, the angled spacer, and then we're going to use the angled spacer and the turn signal switch as a template to drill our holes into the dash. And it doesn't matter which dash you're using. The plastic preformed padded dash, the aluminum dash that is covered with some type of fabric, vinyl or leather, or whether you're using a carbon fiber dash. It's all going to be the same. The only difference is with the carbon fiber dash, if you are installing this and you have not made a provision for the wiring, you're going to have to make a hole big enough for the wiring to go through and allow you to position the turn signal switch on the dash so that you can pre-drill the mounting holes. As you're pulling the turn signal assembly apart, what you may find is that you can't get the hardware out because the turn signal is in a position where the arm is keeping the hardware from pulling out. So you can see right now, I've actually got this in the right turn signal position. And we can get two of the bolts out. So we can get that one out, we can get that one out. But the other one is covered. You can see it's covered right here. Just simply put the turn signal in the other position and you'll be able to get that hardware out. Same thing goes when you're putting it in. If you have trouble getting the hardware in, just move the position of the turn signal stalk so that you gain access to the holes that are covered. What we're going to do now is we're going to feed the wire through the hole in the dash, and you're going to find that you're going to want to kind of push it to the left side towards the gauge that's to the left. So in this case, it's our tachometer. And grab the wire from the back and just kind of pull the whole assembly up. And then what you're going to do is position the turn signal so that the wire harness can go through and the turn signal switch is going to be in the horizontal position. Now we have the turn signal in and at the horizontal position, and you can see two things. One, the angled spacer is at the proper angle because it does not have any gaps behind it in any spot around the outside of it. And two, you can actually see that our steering shaft is not going to be sticking out of the dash far enough when we put our hub on. So we'll go into adjusting your steering shaft a little bit later in the video. But now that we've got this in the right position, what we want to do is we want to make sure that our turn signal stalk is at the rest position. So it's in the center, and ours is not. Ours is actually in the left turn position. So we're going to bring it back to center. We're going to position the turn signal stalk so that it is at a horizontal or level plane with the car. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a drill and a drill bit. I choose to use one of these long drill bits. So this is an 1/8 inch drill bit mounted up in my drill. And then I'm going to go right through 2 holes in the turn signal itself. So make sure your holes are lined up with the actual angled spacer and the turn signal. And then you're going to go ahead and you're going to drill for your top hole right up here. Once you get that top drill hole, you can either leave that drill bit in the hole so it holds its position, or grab another 1/8 inch drill bit, put it in that spot, and then drill your bottom right hole over here. So you're going to drill your hole right over here with it in position with the other drill bit holding the top. Now, because we're using the aluminum dash on this car, and this holds true for the plastic padded dash as well, we are not going to have to drill that bottom left hole. It's basically a blank spot where the wiring will pass right through. As I stated earlier, the only time you're going to have to drill a hole for the wire harness on the turn signal is when you're using a custom dash that you've made yourself, or if you're using the carbon fiber dash, because it will not have a hole in it. All the holes in the carbon fiber dash you have to drill on your own. So since there's no basically backing right there, our backing plate is going to help to hold all that stuff together when we bolt all this nice and tight. Let me pull the turn signal back off of the steering shaft, and we'll take a look at where our holes are and where our wire passes through the dash. So this is where our upper drilled hole is, and it should be in the 12 o'clock position. Right now it's only an 1/8 of an inch. We're going to open that up to a 1/4 of an inch. This is our bottom right hole down here. Same thing, it's at an 1/8 of an inch now. We're going to open that up to a 1/4 of an inch. You can see when I cut the vinyl right here, I did not cut the vinyl all the way down to the bottom of the oval shaped hole. Depending on where your steering shaft ends up, is going to depend on where the bottom of the turn signal basically is going to be on the dash. Right now, our dash is as high as it will go, meaning it can't go any higher because of the placement of this gauge. This gauge is basically at the bottom of the 3/4 inch tube that's up here, so it cannot go any higher. So basically our steering shaft is as low as it's going to be in this position. So when you're cutting out your vinyl, you may want to leave the bottom section of the oval shaped hole covered so that you're not getting close to the margin where the turn signal switch itself is going to cover the hole. Now the wiring is going to pass through here, and the third hole of the 3 is actually going to be in this open area. With the 2 holes that are drilled, we're having you drill those at 1/4 inch, which is going to leave you a little bit of wiggle room so that if you have to fine tune the turn signal so that the arm is at 90 degrees or is level, you have a little bit of adjustment until you do your final tightening of the hardware for the turn signal switch. So let me go ahead. I'm going to open up those holes to 1/4 inch. We're going to install the turn signal switch with all the hardware. We'll do our final adjustments to the turn signal switch and tighten down the hardware. And then I'll show you how to adjust your steering shaft for length so that when the turn signal switch hub is installed, everything has the proper clearance. Once you get the unit snug, go ahead and check for operation, meaning make sure nothing's binding so that everything operates as it should. It's not in a bind so that it's held up and it won't activate right or left. And once you're happy with the positioning of it, go ahead and snug up all of your hardware for the final time. All our hardware is tight. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and then we're going to adjust the length of the steering shaft so that it is in the right position so that we have proper clearance between the turn signal switch and the back of the hub. Right here is where you're going to make your adjustment for your steering shaft length. On the back of the pillow block where the bearing is, there are 2 set screws. We always recommend that you put these towards the back when you install the pillow block in your car. But if you're doing this on a retrofit, you will have to get in from the bottom or from the side, right over here. And you're going to have to loosen those set screws to enable the steering shaft to move out or move in, depending on which position your steering shaft is now. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab an Allen key. I'm going to move both of the set screws into a position where the steering shaft will move in and out. Then we'll adjust it for the proper length so it does not interfere with the turn signal mechanism. So you can see here I've got my Allen key in there, and I'm just going to go ahead and loosen up that set screw. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen this up just to the point where the steering shaft will move in and out. We ask that you maintain a gap here. That gap is going to be 1/16 of an inch as specified in the instructions. You can run it a little more. This one isn't perfect right now. I'm still going to fuss with it a little bit. But after that's in position and you have your steering wheel bolt tightened down, you can tighten down those set screws that are on the pillow block bearing. I've gone ahead and I've tightened up the set screws on the steering shaft. Just go ahead and tighten those down. You know, you don't have to tighten them down until you fart, but you want to get them relatively tight so that there is no inward or outward movement on the steering shaft. And then the last thing is when you mount your steering wheel, make sure you use either anti-seize or you use a medium strength thread locker to prevent the hardware, the screws, the stainless steel machine screws from galling into the aluminum hub. Other than that, that's about it. We've really worked hard on the design of this so that with very little steering input. So if we go ahead and we turn the turn signal to the left turn position and just go about 4 degrees, it will self-cancel. You'll see that. And if we do the same thing to the right, go about 4 degrees and come back, it self-cancels. So you're not going to get those false canceling issues that you have with some of the other turn signal solutions, whether they be electronic or they're mechanical. About 4 degrees of steering input and it will cancel. And if you try to put the turn signal in position, try to turn the turn signal on, when it just happens to line up with our self-canceling pins, it just won't go in. You'll have to turn a little bit farther to enable the turn signal to go in, and you won't harm anything in the turn signal switch itself. So I think that's going to do it for now. If you guys have any questions about the install on a Mark IV, let me know. We'll be doing a coupe install in the near future when we get the Type 65 coupe up here on the lift. But until then, if you're enjoying the content, as always, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.